Hello Internet, and today's video is going to be another book opinion. Those are the videos in which I tell you my opinion on a book. And today's book is going to be Heart of a Samurai by Margie Perez. So this is a very interesting book. The main premise for this book is a 14-year-old Japanese boy and his little fishing crew get trapped on an island. They're shipwrecked, they're trapped on this island, and they end up getting picked up by a bunch of American whalers. And from there, this 14-year-old boy ends up on his way to America and discovering American culture from a very isolated Japan. So this book is based on a real life story, and it gives you information of the real man in the back. And what I liked most about this book was the blend of cultures. I liked how when we were first introduced to our young hero, he was talking about Japanese culture. When he interacted with others, he would mention the hierarchy, why he was thought of as lower because he was the youngest, why he couldn't speak in certain occasions, and sort of how that messed with them when they were on and trapped on an island versus how that differed when they met on the American whaler ship, which is highly different in its hierarchy stage because that one is not so much based on age as everything else, and how you could see the distinct differences in culture. Also how this kid took away from both cultures, where he highly respected his Japanese culture but still took stuff from the American culture and the European culture, but also how he denied things from the European culture once he saw the badness of it and took back up on his Japanese culture. And I liked how this guy blended the cultures together, taking the good and the bad where needed and where necessary, and denying the less kind bits. So this boy, like I said, he goes from Japan to America, and of course we're going to see a bunch of racial things. Of course, these racial slurs and ideas are not as bad as would be with say African Americans, but they are still pretty damning. Now this book is not a social commentary on race, on how people were treated in the past. This definitely has those ideas. It's hard to get away from them when you're trying to tell a realistic story that reflects upon the real past. So of course it does have those ideas. I mean, there are places and points where this kid has to come into the idea that not everyone's going to treat him fairly and equally because he is of a different race. But I also like how it showed that he wasn't exactly foreign to that concept. He wasn't foreign to the idea of treating someone differently based on their ethnicity, because for the Japanese people, they told stories about the white man coming in as demons, and they had locked borders to all Eurocentric people and all Western people. So he grew up learning of the monsters that the Euro world was, and when he saw it from the American perspective, from the Euro perspective of all Japanese being monsters, he was frustrated for both sides, but he also understood. He understood why people had contempt for him based on his race, because a lot of his Japanese counterparts had contempt for Americans because of their race. Now, this to say that while this book is pointing out that both sides are not good in their treatment of each other and how they try to demonize each other to turn their own people against the other group, this is not okaying this sort of idea. It's not saying, oh, because one side is bad, that's okay because the other side is bad too. I think this book and its purpose is to point out that we automatically assume the other is bad. We automatically assume the other is enemy, and the other assumes that we are enemy. And sometimes we can be super hypocritical in our hatred of others, in our hatred of other cultures, because we are both fools. Now, it's not okaying either side for being fools, but that we should let go of our ignorance and learn and mix our cultures together and mix our ideas together, because the world would be better off if we mix these ideas rather than staying isolated and hating each other from other sides of the world. So I really want to stress this point. This is not about okaying hatred towards one. It's not okaying invasion of one people or invasion of the next people, or locking borders or opening borders or anything like that. This is not what this book about. We ain't talking about, well, there was good and bad on both sides, so whatever. No, this book is condemning both sides for their bad actions. Both sides are equally wrong in various different degrees. So we can have greater and lesser degrees in this book of who is right and who is wrong. But I think the overall point is, if we could just understand each other, if we could just learn from each other, then we would be a better, more well-rounded person, a more educated person, because we would stop demonizing another's culture because we don't understand it, and we would start learning from their culture and taking very great things and teaching them how to leave behind their bad things, which is like put together in this 14-year-old boy when he takes like things from American culture, which makes him understand better and makes him respect himself better and makes him share his ideas and see himself as equal to another because he is equal, but also how he denies certain parts of American culture because he sees them as worse and uglier as the Japanese bits where they are more advanced. So we're taking the advanced pieces of both cultures to culminate together and make a newer, richer culture that is better than the other two, right? So I did like that. I liked how even with his time in America, he came to a point and he's like, I might be an American now, but I am still Japanese. I still miss my homeland. I still want to go back. I still want to see my mother and my siblings. I want to go on a little fishing boat again. I don't always love America. And then even when he's hanging out with his Japanese companions, and even when he is like in places that remind him of home, he's sometimes like, well, I wish this thing didn't exist in Japanese culture because I just want to speak, I just want to talk, I just want to do this or do that, but I can't within the bounds and constraints of Japanese culture. So I liked how he was a man living in two different worlds, and I liked how he saw evils in both worlds. Admittedly, more evils in one than the other, but evils in both worlds, good and bad in both worlds, how he took and blended and mixed them. And of course, like, that didn't make him a perfect person at the end of this book, especially if you read those little extra bits where they're like, oh, this is the real man. And I'm like, well, he still had a whole bunch of faults in him, but at the end of the day, I love the message behind it, where it's like you can learn more from different cultures, that this kid had a thirst for knowledge, a thirst for learning, and in spite of people on both sides telling him that he couldn't, that he was gonna be useless, that he shouldn't be messing with this other side, or that other side was bad, or that other side was bad, how he saw the world and he was like, I'm gonna learn as much as I can and take the good and leave behind the bad. And I wish that people would stop being so hypocritical and demonizing each other when all they are doing is not bothering to learn, right? They just want to remain ignorant. They're basing their ideas on ignorance, when if they had just bothered to talk, they would learn where the other person is coming from. Not that the other person's always right, but at least they could understand that concept, which is like what I really liked when he faced like race issues, where he would be like, what you're doing to me isn't right, but I can understand where those ideas come from, right? So I loved that idea of blending cultures, of crossing cultures, of leaving behind cultural ignorance, and of taking from cultures what is best about those cultures and leaving behind what is not. Especially in a globalized world, I think that's a very important thing to take, is to learn more about other cultures and to learn about other cultures' practices, and to try to implement maybe those good parts into your own personal culture, into your own system of belief, and into your own way of living, and leave behind the less negative bits of other cultures that you have been taught over the years. So this is definitely a book if you're interested in like historical based on true story sort of aspect. This is just a historical contemporary sort of book. I found it fascinating, so just because I like learning about culture, I like learning about people who stand in between two worlds. It's my favorite thing, so I was personally invested in this book. It is a Newbery Awards book, so apparently it's good outside of my own personal opinion. If you have read this book before, or if you have read books similar. Comment down below and let me know, what do you think about books where it talks about characters who are crossing in between cultures and stand in as middlemen? Do you like those books? Are those books that really resonate with you like they do with me? I'm just curious. If you like what you're seeing here, you want to continue to see more, click all those bunnies down below, and goodbye, internet.